You know what's becoming surprisingly rare these days? Someone who experiences something beautiful and keeps it to themselves. No photo, no story, no post, just the moment. While most people instinctively reach for their phones, some people simply enjoy what's happening in front of them. And strangely enough, psychology suggests they may be gaining something many others are losing. Because the less your life depends on being seen, the more real it often feels. Think about the last time you were about to post something online. Maybe it was a photo, a vacation, a personal achievement. Before you posted it, there was probably a brief moment where your mind asked a question. How will people react? Will they like it? Will they care? Will this make me look interesting? That moment matters more than most people realize, because hidden inside that split second is a psychological process that influences millions of people every day. Social media didn't just give us a place to share our lives, it gave us an audience. And once an audience exists, something changes. Human beings naturally become more aware of how they're being perceived. Psychologists call this impression management, the tendency to consciously shape how others see us. Long before the internet existed, people did this in everyday life, but social media amplified it. Now, every photo, caption, opinion, and update can potentially be viewed, judged, saved, and revisited forever. For some people, that pressure becomes exhausting, and instead of participating, they quietly step back. Interestingly, research shows that a large percentage of social media users rarely post at all. They scroll, they watch, they observe, but they almost never share. Many researchers refer to these users as passive users, and despite the negative assumptions people often make about them, their behavior may be more intentional than it appears, because for many of these individuals, avoiding constant posting isn't about insecurity. It's about preserving peace. Think about what happens every time someone uploads a photo. Whether they admit it or not, part of the brain begins monitoring feedback, likes, comments, views, reactions. The brain treats these signals as social rewards, and social rewards activate many of the same systems involved in motivation and validation. Over time, this creates a subtle dependency, not necessarily addiction, but expectation. The expectation of being noticed, of being approved, of being acknowledged. People who rarely post often remove themselves from that cycle entirely. Their self-worth becomes less connected to public reactions, and psychology suggests that can have powerful benefits. One theory, known as self-determination theory, argues that people thrive when they feel autonomous, when their choices come from internal values rather than external pressure. Social media often pulls attention outward, toward approval, toward comparison, toward performance. But people who choose not to post frequently tend to maintain stronger boundaries between their private identity and their public image. And that distinction matters, because one of the biggest psychological costs of social media isn't posting, it's comparing. Even when we know people only share highlights, our brains still react as if those highlights represent reality. You see someone's promotion, someone's relationship, someone's new house, someone's perfect vacation, and without realizing it, your brain begins measuring your life against theirs. Psychologists call this social comparison, and countless studies have linked excessive comparison to lower life satisfaction and increased anxiety. People who rarely post often become less invested in that competition, not because they're antisocial, because they recognize the game where everyone controls what others see. Here, every profile becomes a carefully edited story, and many simply decide not to participate. But here's something fascinating. Not posting doesn't mean not paying attention. In fact, many quiet users are incredibly observant. They notice patterns, they notice behavior, they notice emotional changes in people. They're often paying attention to details that active posters completely miss, because their focus isn't on being seen, it's on understanding what they're seeing. Psychologists sometimes distinguish between two forms of self-awareness. Public self-awareness focuses on how others perceive you. Private self-awareness focuses on your thoughts, emotions, values, and beliefs. People who rarely post often lean more heavily toward the second type. Instead of asking, "How does this look?" they ask, "How does this feel?" That small difference can completely change how a person experiences life. When you're not constantly thinking about documenting an experience, you're often more present within it. The vacation becomes a memory instead of content. The conversation becomes connection instead of material for a caption. The achievement becomes personal satisfaction instead of public validation. And perhaps that's why many people who rarely post report feeling surprisingly comfortable with privacy. They don't see every meaningful experience as something that needs to be shared. Some moments are valuable precisely because they are personal. And research suggests that people who maintain stronger boundaries between their public and private lives often experience greater emotional stability. Their mood isn't rising and falling based on online engagement. Their identity exists independently of an audience. And that may be one of the most powerful forms of confidence, because real confidence doesn't always need witnesses. It doesn't require proof. It doesn't depend on applause. It simply exists. Of course, social media itself isn't the problem. It can connect people, inspire people, educate people. The issue is what happens when sharing becomes performing, when experiences become content before they become memories, when validation becomes more important than presence. The people who rarely post aren't necessarily rejecting social media. They're rejecting the pressure that sometimes comes with it. They're choosing to connect differently, on their own terms, in their own way. And maybe that's a lesson hidden inside all of this. The goal isn't to disappear. The goal isn't to avoid people. The goal is to build a life that feels meaningful even when nobody is watching. Because at the end of the day, the most important moments of your life aren't valuable because other people saw them. They're valuable because you lived them. And sometimes the people who post the least may be the ones living the most. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing. And if you enjoy these deep dives into psychology and human behavior, there are more videos waiting for you. I'll see you in the next one.